What happens when the world's largest and most ambitious nations decide to stop following America's script? What does it look like when economic titans rebel and the old order trembles? Tonight, chaos is rippling through global markets in a way not seen for decades. The White House has just gone public with a bombshell announcement. It is now demanding that India, Russia's single largest oil customer, cut off all imports from Moscow. Energy traders are reeling, and the shockwaves are reaching every corner of the financial world, from Wall Street to the bustling markets of Mumbai and Shanghai. Within hours of former President Trump's explosive remarks, oil prices spiked by more than 2%. This isn't just a blip or a minor fluctuation. This is a seismic event that threatens to drive energy costs higher for billions around the globe. For perspective, even a 1% shift in global oil prices can add hundreds of millions of dollars to annual energy bills for countries dependent on imports. Imagine what a 2% spike means for households, businesses, and governments already struggling with tight budgets. India, the top buyer of Russian crude, is reportedly preparing to comply. If that happens, we are looking at the potential for one of the largest disruptions in the history of energy markets. Consider the last time a major oil shock hit. In the 1970s, the OPEC oil embargo sent prices soaring, triggered global recessions, and even led to widespread fuel rationing and long lines at gas stations in the United States and Europe. The stakes today are no less dramatic. But why is Washington acting so aggressively, and why now? Is this about punishing Russia for its actions in Ukraine and elsewhere, tightening America's grip on the world's energy supply, or is there a deeper, more strategic game at play? The most urgent question is this: who will bear the cost of this dangerous gambit? Will it be Russia, potentially cut off from critical revenue streams that fund its economy and military? India, risking its economic growth and political stability? Or will it be ordinary families and investors, forced to absorb the shock as prices soar and markets teeter on the brink of panic? The stakes are enormous. If America's hardline gamble pays off, global oil prices could surge, meaning higher costs for everyone, everywhere. We could see inflation rates, already high in many countries, spiral even further out of control. But if this bold move fails, it could mark the beginning of the end for American dominance, ushering in a new era of unpredictable alliances, economic turmoil, and perhaps even the rise of new global leaders. This standoff is more than just a headline. What unfolds next could reshape the lives of billions, redraw the rules of the global economy, and determine who sets the price of energy for generations to come. To understand how we reach this breaking point, we need to trace the roots of America's strategy and the fierce resistance rising from India, China, and other emerging giants. Washington has tried to squeeze Asia before, but this time, the stakes are unprecedented. What makes this moment different is not just the scale of pressure, but how close the world stands to a true tipping point. History is full of examples where great powers tried to enforce their will. Think of the British Empire's attempts to control colonial trade, or the United States-led embargoes against Cuba or Iran. Each time, resistance grew, often leading to unintended consequences and the forging of new alliances. For months, the United States has steadily tightened the screws. Harsh sanctions came first, then steep tariffs on Indian goods, now climbing as high as 50%. To put this in context, a 50% tariff can make Indian textiles, pharmaceuticals, and machinery unaffordable in American markets overnight, threatening millions of jobs in Indian manufacturing hubs like Surat and Chennai. The masterstroke? An aggressive push to cut off Russian oil flowing to India, a step that could send shockwaves through global energy markets in a single night and upend established supply chains built over decades. Beijing is not just watching from the sidelines. Chinese officials have blasted Washington's moves as nothing less than economic terrorism, warning openly of payback. What began as sharp rhetoric is morphing into a real high-stakes contest. Asia's biggest powers are signaling readiness to strike back, not just with words, but with actions. We saw the beginnings of this in the recent rare earth export restrictions China imposed on the United States. hinting at how quickly economic disputes can escalate into broader trade wars. India now stands at a crossroads. Prime Minister Modi faces a brutal dilemma: yield to American pressure and risk economic pain, or defy Washington and invite retaliation. India's economy relies on cheap Russian oil, fueling everything from city buses to kitchen stoves. Without it, transportation costs and household fuel bills could soar, igniting public anger and political chaos. Recall the farmer protests of recent years. Energy price spikes could unleash even larger demonstrations across major cities. If India bows completely, it risks a surge in inflation that could hit millions and destabilize the government. For example, a 10% increase in fuel prices can raise food transport costs, making basic goods unaffordable for the poorest families. If India resists, it may keep buying Russian oil, but quietly, through back channels and alternative payments, as Iran did under American sanctions. The boldest move: India could openly ally with China and the BRICS, challenging American financial dominance head-on and rewriting the rules of world trade. Just last year, BRICS leaders discussed launching a new reserve currency to reduce their dependence on the dollar, a move that could have profound consequences for global finance. Every option is fraught with risk. India's next move could soothe tensions, send oil prices spiraling, or even spark a seismic shift in global alliances. For investors, companies, and families everywhere, the ripple effects will stretch from stock markets to the price at the pump, from pension funds to grocery store shelves. With the world watching, India weighs its options, knowing any misstep could tip the balance of global power. The coming days will reveal whether confrontation or compromise lies ahead. What happens when the world's fastest-growing economies refuse American demands? That question is no longer hypothetical. The energy chessboard has become a battlefield, and the confrontation is direct. Neither side is willing to retreat, and the stakes grow higher with each passing hour. China is drawing a line in the sand. Officials in Beijing accuse Washington of economic blackmail, denouncing recent U.S. actions as an attempt to rewrite the rules of global trade. This is not just posturing. China is signaling it will strike back if provoked, making it clear it will not quietly accept American pressure. In fact, China has already increased its own purchases of Russian oil, offering Moscow a lifeline and strengthening ties between the two countries. India faces mounting U.S. demands but refuses to yield. Indian leaders put national priorities first, ensuring stable energy supplies and affordable prices for their people. Delhi has stated bluntly that it will not sacrifice economic progress or energy security to appease foreign powers. In a recent statement, the Indian Foreign Ministry emphasized that access to affordable energy is not just an economic issue, but a question of national security and social stability. In response, the United States has dramatically increased pressure. Punitive tariffs, some as high as 50%, now target a wide array of Indian goods. The message is unmistakable. These measures aim to coerce India into distancing itself from Moscow and curbing Russian oil imports. This echoes the Cold War era, when economic tools were wielded as weapons to force compliance. Yet India's answer is defiant. Instead of capitulating, India has boosted its purchases of Russian oil over the past 2 years. For Delhi, the math is simple. Discounted Russian crude means lower costs and direct benefits for Indian consumers and industries, especially as demand at home skyrockets. In the past year alone, Indian imports of Russian oil have more than tripled, saving billions of dollars that would otherwise have gone to Middle Eastern suppliers. This moment marks a watershed. The era of American dominance in global energy is fading. Rising powers like China and India are determined to chart their own course, guided by sovereignty and the pursuit of growth. The shift recalls the collapse of the Bretton Woods system in the 1970s, when countries broke free from American-imposed financial rules and forged new paths in currency and trade. The risks, however, are immense. If American tactics fail, Washington's authority could collapse, sending shockwaves through the global economy. If India or China misjudge the stakes, they could face economic pain or diplomatic isolation. The consequences reach every corner, from world leaders to businesses, investors, and ordinary families who depend on stable energy flows. As the crisis unfolds, the tremors threaten to topple the very foundation of the global order. The rules of the game are being rewritten before our eyes, just as they were in the aftermath of World War II, when the United States helped create institutions like the IMF and World Bank to cement its leadership. Now, those same institutions may be losing their grip. But in this volatile new reality, who really holds the upper hand? And how far are the major players willing to go? The next moves could decide the fate of the global energy system, and with it, the shape of the 21st century economy. Is this the collapse of American energy dominance, or the opening volley in a new, chaotic world order? As the standoff escalates, shockwaves are coursing through every continent, disrupting the lives of billions. The first tremor is inflation. With India and China standing firm, oil flows are rapidly pivoting toward Asia. Russia is ramping up its own refining capacity, seeking insulation from Western pressure. This reshuffling threatens to send prices surging, squeeze family budgets, and tip entire economies toward instability. Yet, that is only the opening act. In defiance of Washington, new coalitions are forming at breakneck speed. The BRICS alliance, China, and an expanding circle of energy-hungry nations are rejecting American dictates, determined to write their own rules. The global energy chessboard is being overturned, and those who hesitate risk irrelevance. Just as the non-aligned movement emerged in the Cold War to resist superpower dominance, today's multipolar alliances aim to ensure no single nation can dictate terms. Experts warn we are entering unmapped territory. The risk of panic selling, chaotic supply chain shifts, or the collapse of long-standing trading norms has never been higher. The era of a sole superpower dictating the market is ending, replaced by a scramble for influence. Consider the 2008 financial crisis, when a lack of global coordination led to cascading failures. Today's energy standoff could trigger similar contagion effects. Signs of a fading order are everywhere. Even some of America's traditional allies are quietly pursuing their own energy deals, hedging against an increasingly uncertain future. The age of a single energy hegemon is ebbing, replaced by a volatile, multipolar reality. Germany, for example, has signed new LNG agreements with Qatar, while Japan is exploring alternative suppliers in Southeast Asia. Meanwhile, China and India's bold defiance is emboldening others. Across Asia, Africa, and Latin America, nations are seizing the chance to break free from Western dominance. This surge of momentum could redraw alliances for a generation. In Africa, countries like Nigeria and Angola are exploring new oil partnerships outside of Western frameworks, while in Latin America, Brazil is seeking to expand its role as an energy exporter and power broker. The stakes: global market chaos on this scale threatens the livelihoods and savings of millions. Countries that fail to adapt may find themselves stranded, powerless, and left out of the new order. During the Asian financial crisis of the late 1990s, nations that failed to adjust quickly saw their economies collapse overnight, a cautionary tale for today's policymakers. But even as these shifts play out on the world stage, the consequences are about to hit much closer to home. For ordinary families, what happens next will be felt in their wallets and in their sense of security. Already, energy bills are rising, and food prices are starting to climb as transport costs soar. Small businesses, from trucking companies to farmers, face difficult choices about how to absorb or pass on these new expenses. How do you find your footing in an energy world where yesterday's rules no longer apply? The global landscape is shifting beneath us, and the old playbook for energy politics is being torn up as new powers emerge. Just as the industrial revolutions of the 19th and 20th centuries rewrote global trade. Today's energy realignment is opening doors for innovation, but also for risk and uncertainty. A critical pattern is emerging: economic pressure, whether through sanctions or tariffs, often backfires. Instead of isolating targeted nations, these tactics can spark a surge in independence, driving countries to chart their own course and build resilience. The American embargo on Cuba, for example, led Havana to deepen ties with the Soviet Union. More recently, sanctions against Iran fostered self-sufficiency and new trading networks. History offers clear warnings. Sanctions and tariffs rarely reach their stated objectives. More often, they push nations to create new alliances, invent alternative supply chains, and speed up innovation. The current confrontation is already forcing India, China, and others to seek pragmatic partnerships and sidestep outside demands. Russia, for instance, is developing new oil export terminals in the Arctic and investing in overland pipelines to Asia. For ordinary people and investors alike, the message is stark: get ready for turbulence. Energy prices, supply routes, and even the reliability of deliveries are now unpredictable. Sudden policy changes or unexpected moves by major players can send costs soaring or cut off supplies without warning. Anyone managing a household budget, running a business, or investing globally must prepare for a world where volatility is the new normal. National strategies are changing fast. Increasingly, countries are putting sovereignty and direct economic benefit ahead of ideology or traditional alliances. Pragmatism is eclipsing loyalty as the guiding principle in international energy deals. Indonesia, for example, is balancing its partnerships with China, Japan, and the West to maximize its own interests, refusing to pick sides outright. So what should you do? Begin by watching how your government responds to Washington's escalating pressure. Is your country carving out its own pragmatic path or sticking to old loyalties? Stay alert to shifts in global energy politics and be willing to adapt your financial and personal plans as the story evolves. Failing to keep pace could mean missing vital opportunities or being blindsided by economic upheaval. Practical steps for individuals and families include diversifying investments, monitoring energy market news, and considering the impact of rising fuel prices on personal budgets. For business owners, building flexible supply chains and exploring alternative energy sources can help cushion against sudden disruptions. Governments, meanwhile, would do well to invest in strategic reserves and renewable energy to reduce vulnerability to external shocks. But if the world is leaving the old order behind, where does that leave the United States? The next twist in this drama will reveal just how far Washington is willing to go to defend its dominance. Will America double down on sanctions and tariffs, risking global backlash? Or will it seek compromise and adapt to the new multipolar reality, as Britain did after the Suez Crisis of the 1950s? Which side of history will your country choose as the foundations of global trade begin to shift? Will you align with the old guard, or embrace the rise of new power centers? This is more than a contest between presidents or a simple tug-of-war over sanctions. We are witnessing the twilight of an era, one where a single superpower could set oil prices, steer global capital, and shape the destinies of entire nations. Now, as the United States escalates efforts to block Russian oil and leans harder on India to comply, the old order is fracturing in real time. It is reminiscent of the decline of previous empires, when resistance from the periphery signaled a new chapter in world affairs. Yet India and China are not yielding. They refuse to trade away their own interests for another's ambitions. Instead, they are building new partnerships, locking in crucial energy deals at advantageous rates, and sending a clear message: American supremacy is no longer guaranteed. The rise of regional payment systems, like China's CIPS and India's RuPay, further erodes US dollar dominance. For ordinary people everywhere, the fallout is personal. The price you pay at the pump, the strength of your retirement savings, the health of your investments, all hinge on the outcome of this high-stakes confrontation. Your nation's global standing, and even its economic security, are on the line as the rules of international commerce are rewritten. Just as the tech boom of the 1990s created new winners and losers, today's energy revolution is reshaping economic fortunes worldwide. Will you and your leaders embrace this emerging multipolar reality? Or will you cling to the fading comfort of the old world order, even as it unravels beneath your feet? The choices made now will determine not only who controls energy, but who will shape the rules of global trade for generations. The opportunity to lead, and the risk of being left behind, has never been greater. History will not forget this crossroads. The only question is, will your country stand aside, follow the crowd, or lead boldly into the new energy age? As alliances realign and old power centers crumble, the coming changes may upend everything we thought we knew. So what can you do, right now, to prepare for a world where uncertainty is the only certainty? Start by diversifying your investments, staying informed about geopolitical developments, and demanding that your leaders protect your interests, not just those of distant allies or rivals. Support policies that promote resilience, whether through renewable energy, strategic reserves, or strong local economies. Stay with us to discover how nations and individuals are preparing for an uncertain and volatile future. The drama is far from over, and your choices today could make all the difference tomorrow.